Hello, everyone, and welcome to Overtime. Vox is unfortunately unavailable tonight. We are learning that there is what appears to be a new variant in New York of the COVID virus. This variant is similar to, but not quite the same as the African variant. Or let me rephrase that. It has not yet been confirmed to be the African variant. It is similar to, but it appears not to be the African variant. So we'll learn more about it. What we do know is that while we're not sure about transmission rates as far as people who have received the vaccine, we do know that there does still seem to be some efficacy of the current vaccines against it. We'll be sort of learning more and bringing that to you as it comes. 18 months after issuing a subpoena into Trump's taxes for the last 8 years, the Manhattan District Attorney has been told that has actually gotten a hold of them. The U.S. Supreme Court today declined to hear Trump's final appeal on the issue, and as of this moment, the Manhattan District Attorney does in fact have his taxes from his accounting firm. The inquiry was originally into hush money. It was paid to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, but it has expanded dramatically to include tax and insurance fraud, falsification of bank and business records, and money laundering. Nearly every aspect of Trump's organization is now under scrutiny, and if the previous New York Times reporting on these taxes, because they've actually had his taxes for a while and have released certain pieces of it, if any of that is correct, it would suggest that there is some rather significant shenanigans going on and may open him up to considerable liability. So in 2018, Saudi dissident and Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi was in a Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, when he was taken into the back, or he was escorted into the back, where he was assaulted and, while still alive, chopped up into pieces, which were later taken out of the consulate one by one. And it's one of the more gruesome killings that we've heard of in quite some time. He was a critic of Saudi Arabia, a longtime U.S. ally. Saudi Arabia blamed rogue agents in the killing. Apparently, just we don't know. There are these rogue bandits going around that chop people up in the middle of our consulate. And U.S. intelligence agencies universally concluded that the Saudi crown prince himself likely ordered the killing and certainly knew of it. One of his bodyguards was involved, as were a number of assassins that he has been known to employ. This was all outlined in a report which Donald Trump buried. When the report finally became, the existence of the report became public, he said that he did not believe the report. The report was obviously in error, and he continued to sort of cozy up to specifically the Crown Prince and Saudi Arabia in general. Now, this is important because we have long been allies. We've discussed this on the show before. This is one of my sort of pet issues, is the United States' relationship with Saudi Arabia. And it actually should be one of your pet issues as well, and here's why. One of the things that most people tend to forget, and this government has done a pretty good job in making people forget, is that most of, all but I think one, maybe two, of the 9/11 hijackers were Saudi. There's a reason they were Saudi. Despite Saudi Arabia being technically an ally, we are allied with its government, not with its people. Its people despise us. There was, at one point, a terrorist amongst the Saudi people. His name was Osama bin Laden, who made it his mission to destroy us. And there were reasons. Now, he was insane. He was crazy, and religious fundamentalists often are. But some of his complaints were completely valid, not the least of which was that we gave a good deal of money and guns to the royal house of Saud so that they could stay in power. They used this money and guns to brutally oppress, murder, and commit genocide against their own people, and most recently against Yemenis nationals in the Yemen Revolution. They are a brutal dictatorial regime. They are guilty of genocide. They are guilty of massive human rights violations and very good friends of ours. We have problems, very serious problems with dictators like Saddam Hussein only after they will no longer be in our pocket. We gave Saddam Hussein most of the chemical weapons that he had and that he had used when he gassed 10,000 of his own people in northern Iraq. Now, we support the Royal House of Saud for a very simple reason. We support them because they're willing to work with us. They're that desperate to stay in power, and we can help them do it. And they're willing to trade veto power on OPEC for the guns and that we're willing to sell to them. So we sell them weapons, and in exchange, we get some of the best oil prices on the planet. The boom of the 90s is often credited to Bill Clinton, and he deserves a little credit. 15%, maybe 20%. In truth, George Bush Sr. deserves most of the credit in having his, then I think it was Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney must have been working for Halliburton. Why did I think Dick Cheney was the Secretary of Defense at that point? I'll have to, it's been a while. You'll have to excuse me. No, it was the vice president. Must have been. I don't know. I'll have to look that one up. No, I'm pretty sure it was the Secretary of Defense at the time, to George Bush Sr., who made a deal with the Saudis where we, the largest manufacturer and seller of guns on the planet, sold them weapons, aircraft, and anything they needed so that they could stay in power. In turn, as other countries saw their oil prices go up, every time OPEC tried to raise the price of oil to us, they would veto it with the occasional, like, oh, we're not really in their pocket, so we're not going to veto it. But for the most part, we got some spectacularly good oil prices entirely as a result of the deal by Bush Sr. to sell them weapons, knowing full well their human rights violation record on human rights and what they intended to do in the future with those guns. Now, we have maintained that close relationship, and it has been one of the best economic boons for this country. That is one of the larger reasons why Osama bin Laden was angry with us. That was one of the larger reasons that he felt it was okay to target civilians, because in this country, civilians elect their leaders. So there is a bit less of a distinction to the outsider who is being oppressed by his own fascist government. There is less of a distinction between the civilians and their government, because the government is, in fact, civilian. As long as we continued to support and elect presidents who would allow and help the Royal House of Saud remain in power, we, the civilians of this country, were a target. Now, there were other reasons that were completely unhinged, that he did not like us, and he was not pleased with the fact that we had women on military bases on Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and where is CENTCOM? CENTCOM isn't in Qatar, it's in Dubai. So, wow, my brain's a little in neutral. I apologize. At any rate, the fact that we had the military bases on holy lands was an objection. The fact that there were women driving cars, no less, also he objected to. So he had some pretty unreasonable complaints against the United States. But he was joined by a lot of Saudis who don't like us for that reason. And when Abu Ghraib happened, that confirmed to many Arabs that America is exactly what he said we were. Now, we are not. But this has been blood on our hands that we have not objected to. In fact, we've endorsed for quite some time. So, excuse me. This, as I said, is it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's a personal issue for me, and it's been one for a very long time. And 9/11 was, in large part, a result of these kinds of policies. Trump was more than happy to continue with that kind of status quo and to bury any evidence that the royal House of Saud was in any way whatsoever involved with the killing of, again, Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Biden has said that he will not continue that policy, and he has, at least for now, temporarily suspended all weapons sales to Saudi Arabia. He has said that he has reaffirmed our commitment to the Saudi Arabia's king, but has said that he will hold anybody who is found to be responsible for that murder. He will hold them accountable. He will hold them responsible, and has suggested that that, in fact, will be the Saudi crown prince. He has also said that he will sever ties. Well, no, he hasn't said. He has suggested that he would sever ties if accountability cannot be found in that country. That is a staggering reversal of policy, and I think about a week ago, we had said that this would be the best indicator of whether or not Biden really does mean what he says and intends to put America first when it comes to being the leader in rights, human rights across the world. This is a spectacularly good indicator. This is not good for the U.S. economy. This is not good for oil prices in the U.S. It may be good for our energy independence. That's in a whole nother ball of wax. But nonetheless, it is the only moral option that Biden has, and he has decided to take it. So we are going to continue to follow that. But that's one that I think most people don't know a heck of a lot about. We probably should do an entire show on it. It's one of the areas of foreign policy people don't understand. And again, with good reason. That's where there's a reason the 9/11 report redacted the country of origin of the hijackers. It's because they were Saudi. Moving on, the catastrophic failure of the Texas power grid has had yet another interesting side effect. Many customers pay in Texas based on whatever the current market rate is, sort of like buying lobster, I suppose, at a restaurant. Whatever the current market rate is, that's what you pay. Well, the current market rate is determined by the fluctuations in the power grid, supply and demand, and because of the massive failures, the cost of electricity skyrocketed. And many people found who had previously a $100 or a $150 bill a month, found their monthly bill ballooning up to $5,000 over the course of just 5 days. And in the case of one person, Scott Willoughby, for having power on during the storm, during a 1-week period, his bill was in excess of $16,000. Now, there have been a number of charities, including one that has raised $2 million to help Texans pay for this. However, I'm not sure that I necessarily even approve of that, because if you help the customers pay this, that money goes to the electric companies, the people who produce the electricity, which are these private companies. A number of them have made out like bandits. The private owners have become wealthy over just this period of time because of the way they've been able to leverage the sudden change in supply and demand to their advantage. So they've talked now about finding the state governments finding a way to help people pay their bills here. I am reminded of the governor of Colorado City, Texas, who, as you may remember, came out on Twitter and said that, well, people who get fucked over, it's on you. You had your eyes open. You knew what you were signing up for. That's life. Sometimes life is hard, and you should find a way to make do. And I'm reminded of that and think that I'd like to see him say that to his fellow Texans who now can't pay their $16,000 electric bills. He resigned, but nonetheless, that's an attitude in Texas which, funnily enough, seems to be flexible when it's your constituents who are in trouble. Moving on. Just a few hours ago, the U.S. Carried out airstrikes in Syria against Iranian-backed militias. Now, Iranian-backed militias have actually been sending rockets into the green zone for quite some time. They rarely hit anything, and it was only when Iran itself started firing rockets into the green zone that we covered it significantly, but we did at that point go over just how often the Iranian-backed militias do this, and it's more frequently than is brought up in the news, but it's because really rarely anything happens. These militias are often actually backed by unofficial members of the Saudi government and Saudi civilians, again, for the reasons I've already outlined. So they'll fire rockets into the green zone. Oftentimes, they're not even really trying to hit anything. Sometimes they are, and they miss anyway. It's not a big deal. However, this is Biden's first known authorized use of military action. They have targeted buildings in Syria. This does on occasion get blowback from Syria, who doesn't like us targeting those buildings. And it puts them in a unique position because they do actually give some under-the-table support to these militias. These militias are attacking the U.S., and to tell you the truth, our relationship with them is a little tense. So it puts them in a difficult spot because they don't necessarily object to the behavior, but on the flip side, they know we do. So the militias don't ever actually hit anything of value. The Syrian government doesn't ever actually stop them, and we rarely take any action of any kind. That's called politics. And we sit and we watch and we play this little dance, and Biden has seemed to telegraph that he's about had enough of that. Now, this happened just hours ago. We don't know what structures they hit. We don't know if there was anybody of any value in them, and by value I mean specifically to the Saudi government. And it may just be a show by Biden. It may not. We're going to keep an eye on this as well. But it's all right. And Titan has made a good point. I'm not actually sure it can be called gouging. Demand drives up prices. He is, in fact, correct. And it's funny because I wrote a book in which this almost exact thing happens, where water is in fact for sale, and because of a sudden shortfall in the demand, the supply of water, the price even to flush your toilet becomes thousands of dollars. So it's an interesting situation that happens in neoliberal economies, and this kind of thing can happen. It isn't gouging technically, and the reason it's not technically gouging is because the companies are making the profit that they are entitled to make based on those fluctuations. But those fluctuations do mean that they get a tremendous amount more profit because the company is making more money for actually outputting less. They do have to make repairs. They have to, fix the system. Obviously, they're going to get reimbursed for at least some of that, probably by the state anyway. And in the meantime, their margins are the same. That's why it's not gouging. It's because the margins haven't changed. But the margins being the same on a $16,000 electric bill is a huge amount more money coming in. And in that way, they're actually incentivized to allow for failures in the system because they get more money that way. That was one of the objections. Now, 10 years ago, the federal government said, here's everything that's wrong with the Texas power grid. 10 years ago, Texas actually underwent a very similar thing. This is the worst failure of the Texas grid in 10 years. 10 years ago, they underwent almost an identical set of circumstances. Same thing happened. Federal government said, these are your problems. This is how you fix them. And none of their recommendations were done. So as of this moment, Texas is looking into, they're saying they're looking into understanding how and why this has happened. They did last time and did nothing about it. So we'll see if anything changes. I think it's 4 members of the Energy Board have offered up their resignation. So we'll see what happens with that. But judging by what happened last time, I'm a little less than optimistic. I think they're going to do what they usually do, which is take it very, very seriously for about 3 months and then drop it. Anyways, not that I'm cynical. And our last story, NASA's Perseverance rover has landed on Mars. This rover has 2 cameras. They are fixed lens cameras. They can't focus in the same way, but because there's 2 of them and they shoot an overlapping image, they can shoot much better images than any past rover that we have landed on Mars. Their primary objective is, once again, to search for any signs of life, ancient microbial life they're looking for. They're also going to collect samples and then actually hold on to these samples for NASA or ESA, Future European Space Agency, or NASA missions to come and collect the samples and bring them back home. So we're looking forward to that, but there are pictures of it, and they are the best pictures you've ever seen of an alien planet. And we encourage you to go look at NASA's website, or just look anywhere at some of the most beautiful imagery of Mars that has ever been taken. One of them that I really enjoyed was a Martian sunset. And the land there is a little bleak compared to but that was a pretty gorgeous thing, and to see it on another planet, it's one of the few things that this species has done that we can say we did as a species. We got off the planet. So anyways, there you go. Jake 4D, super chat for $2. Thank you, Jake. Rose by any other name, price gouging. Yeah, well, yeah, you see, I think that's why. I mean, I would hope that in a time of crisis, when the prices are getting exorbitant, they would lower their margins, but they're not required to. And listen, there's very little I object to more than having to say that Titan's right about something. But because it matters in an economic sense, he is right. I still consider it price gouging. In my view, it is price gouging, but in a technical sense, it absolutely is not. But I think Jake, you and I would be slightly more of they're making money off of the vast increase in price as a result of a huge drop, not of their fault, but nonetheless a catastrophic emergency situation drop in supply. The supply goes down. It is a statewide state of emergency, and they make a whole bunch of extra money because their margins have stayed the same, but the cost, or what they bill for it, has gone up. It's all gone up based on predetermined schedules and what was approved by the state, because the state actually approved the increase that the generators requested. So it's a tough situation, and the only one big reason why we have to point out it's not price gouging is because it was approved by the state. And by nature of the fact that it was approved by the state means you have to hold the state largely responsible for it too. A corporation will do what a corporation does. They're going to take advantage of people. They're not even real. I mean, they're taking advantage of people, but in a way that the system almost is allowed. That's why you don't do this kind of thing. But if you've got a neoliberal system like this set up, that's what's going to happen. Period. It's a part of the system, so it's not really gouging. They're not doing anything extra to take. They're not taking electricity and saying we're going to up the price just because we can, and just because we're going to hold people hostage over it, and it's going to be bidding. But on the flip side, it kind of is, because the price is still set by the market, which is arguably is what happens in price gouging too. If all of a sudden gasoline in the U.S. isn't available, and I say, okay, I'm going to charge you $1,000 a gallon. Okay, that's price gouging. But on the flip side, if that's what the market will bear, that's neoliberal economics. So yeah, it's iffy. I will, on a technical sense, I will regrettably side with Titan. But for the most part, in terms of how I view it, Jake, I very much concur with you. Like the solipsism jokes of it, yeah. Oy vey. So I think that just about covers it. So we do have now, we have a number of people here who joined us, and I sincerely appreciate that. Vox and I have been discussing a few things, and we're going to be discussing a few things with our patrons and with a few other people. This show actually does two things, really. We say news, politics, and culture. We have the Overtime, which are the shows that we've been doing weekly. We didn't used to do them weekly. We just had a lot of news, and then we settled from basically every day or every other day at the height of when COVID was really a news thing to now, doing a rundown once a week. And doing our regular Tuesday shows where we'll have on guests and do interviews or discuss some interesting topic. We still have our news show Off Time, which is going to be coming up soon. And we just had a marvelous discussion on memory and how does human memory work? And I'm looking forward to that coming up. But the thing is, those are actually two different kinds of shows. One is of course the culture and what's happening on culturally in there, the interviews, and then there's the news and politics. So as a channel right now, we're doing both at the same time, and there's absolutely a group of people, most of them in our live chat right now, who are interested in both, and we certainly appreciate that. But it also does sometimes cause some issues in the YouTube algorithm, and it's a little bit of a schizophrenic channel in that sense. I think they're related, I really do, but turns out YouTube does not. At any rate, so we are considering whether we're going to be continuing our weekly rundown. I've gotten used to it, and I do enjoy it. But this really was a response to a huge amount of news, and what we're getting now is just sort of the weekly news. If it's something that our patrons and our viewers are interested in, we'll keep doing it. And if it's something they're less interested in and want to see more focus on our in-time shows, we can do that. And we've actually talked about, and some of you have heard this, we've been talking about this for months, really, maybe splitting the channel, having one for in-time, having one for overtime. All options are on the board. We're not in any rush to make a decision, but if you want to discuss these things, you can, either as a patron or just a viewer. Come on into our Discord. Let us know. You can hit me up, any thoughts that you have. But that's just the discussion we've been having around the table. For now, I do enjoy these shows, and certainly the other thing is, and I realized this, and I'm going to say this before I go. I was talking with someone, and I realized that in time, whatever it was intended to be, and I think it's very close to what it was intended to be, but whatever it was intended to be has actually become, in many ways, a community show. We rely very heavily on the support from the community. It's not just financial support, but the people who regularly discuss news and politics and put these things in our Discord so that we have this information, so that we know what the community is talking about and what they want to see. And, when I'm preparing for this show, and everybody knows this, I go through our news section and I go through and I say, okay, what are we going to hit? And there are people who we get breaking news because somebody just tagged me in and says, hey, maybe you're going to want to go live with this. So this show has as much to do with its community as it does with anybody who's ever been in front of the camera. So I'd like to say thank you very much, first of all, to the community. And I try to take the time every now and then to do it. I do it. I try to thank people once or twice a year, like clockwork. And so I'd like to say thank you to our audience. Thank you to those who are watching us. And like I said, because of that, we engage with the community. And if you guys have any suggestions or want to talk about it, the patrons we always talk to first. And we had our patron hangout, which I sincerely appreciate. And again, you can become a patron, join, help support the show, help be involved in these discussions. But we're going to be talking about it on the Discord. Tonight, I will not be able to join anyone on the Discord, but I hope you guys will come in and discuss the show or anything else you want to. I'll be able to show up, but it'll be a little late for me. So probably in about a half hour, I'll be able to stop by the Discord. If you've made it this far, I think that means you like the show. Please like and subscribe. That has a huge impact on us and on the algorithm, which is sort of the god of YouTube. It affects how visible we are to others. So please do like and subscribe, and look forward to catching you all on the Discord. I've seen a few other comments in the live chat, mostly having to do with solipsism. I have no idea how that became. I know how that became. But at any rate, right now we have scheduled on Tuesday. We are going to have What is Gender? And Vox is going to have a I think, very lengthy discussion with us on what is gender. We're going to have that discussion, and then we are looking forward to having